Okay, a warm welcome to all of you to Alchemist Book Club, where we enjoy discussing books and everything around it. So the whole purpose of this book club is just to discuss about the books, the authors, the ideas, the various genres, and bring people together so that we can keep discussing about books, discover new books, new ideas, and be curious, always be curious to know more. It's been 4 years since we started this club. It started in April 2018. So it's a community of book readers, as I told you. We meet on second and last Saturdays of every month to take different kind of books and discuss the concepts and ideas around it. So if you're new to the book club and this is the first time you're attending, I will be sharing a link so that you will be able to fill up the form and we can include you into the group so that you can enjoy whatever we discuss out of books. And if you'd like to facilitate like what Namachivayam and Ashwin are doing today, please reach out to us. We'll be glad to hear from you, whether you're an author or you're very fond of some kind of a journal or book or an author. Please take up the opportunity in order to facilitate to other members to introduce your ideas and thoughts about those books. Okay. With that, a little bit of a note about Alchemist Book Club and welcoming you all. Let's move on to today's session, which is celebrating James Heriot. Apparently, I also did a research one day after hearing about James Heriot in the book club. So I know many would be not aware of this author, but he's supposed to be such a famous writer, author, vet who has contributed a lot on what the perspective of those creatures who cannot speak, right? So it's a very interesting journal and a topic to discuss. And we have Namachivayam and Ashwin to take us through the session today. So over to you, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot, TG. The first few slides, Ashwin will talk about. He will talk about the books, and later on I will take over from him and continue through the presentation.
So the format is going to be first the presentation, right? And you're going to talk about the various books. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So can you share your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks everyone for joining today. So as TG said, we're going to be talking about James Heriot. Let's go to the next slide.
One second.
Sure.
Takes a bit of time, I think.
No worries. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. Now, this is a famous hymn, poem, by Cecil Alexander. And I remember that we had this in school. It was part of our hymn book, and we would sing this in assembly. I'm not sure which started first. Like, did I have to sing this song in assembly first? Or did I come across James Heriot's books first? But the reason we're talking about this is there are James Heriot books, and I think the first one I started, the title was All Things Bright and Beautiful, right? So that really resonates with me. Again, I don't know if the hymn came first for me or the book came first for me, but either way, that connection between the hymn and the books is very, very strong. And you'll find some of these books, in the following slides as well, with these kind of titles. But basically, this is the premise of the books. It talks about all kinds of creatures, great and small. Okay. Let's move forward, please.
Yeah.
So these are some of the individual books, and these are smaller collections, right? These are the ones that came first, and then came the omnibus editions. With the titles that I referred to earlier. Can you go to the next slide? So as I said, I think Namo sir might have started with the books we saw on the earlier slide, but for me, I think I started with All Things Bright and Beautiful, or All Creatures Great and Small, and these are omnibus editions. And as you can see, this is what I was referring to. Some of these books have the titles, each line of that on that hymn, right? What are these books about? Let's go ahead. Let's move forward. Yeah. Of course, there's the best of James Heriot as well. But what are these books really about? Can we go to the next slide? Here's a review from the New York Times. Warm, joyous, and often hilarious first person to chronicle of a young animal doctor. And it says it shines with a love of life. And that's absolutely correct in my opinion. Next slide, please. So, these are books that revolve around a vet in Yorkshire. Okay. And that's a place that I just read about in a book when I was young. Why does it resonate with me so much sitting here growing up in Chennai? Why does it resonate with Namo sir and millions of readers around the world? The way it's written, it is written in a bygone time, right? And even when we were kids, I think we recognized the fact that those were bygone times. There's a certain nostalgia to it. There's a certain romanticism to it. It's very nicely written. It's not written to make a point. It's not written to send a message. It just tells a story, right? And it's a nice story of a nice person who does nice things, right? The situations might not be very nice sometimes, but the language used is wonderful. The writing is powerful. There are perspectives from even the animal's point of view. He's a very keen observer of nature. As anyone who loves nature, who loves animals would be, he's a keen observer of behavior and of the situation, but also a very, very keen observer of humans and their behavior and their characteristics. And all of this sort of shines through in that book. Next slide, please. Now, as the review also said earlier, often hilarious, right? And the way he writes this book, it's not all, neither is it all doom and gloom, neither is it, all humor, but that humor shines through. And there are instances where you might actually laugh out loud just because of the absurdity of a certain situation or the way he describes some characters in the village or characters he encounters, or some of those conversations that he has with some of his customers, right? Those very curt, taciturn Yorkshire farmers, right, who are not used to being very expressive with their communication. So all of that sort of shines through. Some of these are very funny. There are tragedies and failures, of course, when he tries to save an animal or some surgery that goes wrong, and that really tugs at your heartstrings. There are so many other things that warms one's heart as well, delivering puppies, etc. There's so many instances where that whole world of how to take care of animals and how they are wonderful creatures is sort of illustrated. And the deep maturity and understanding of both humans and animals comes through. And what one is left with is a sense of how compassionate he is, how empathetic he is. And you can't help but sort of have that instilled in you as well. I mean, I grew up in a house with a lot of animals. And I think a lot of that love for animals and curiosity, etc., came from reading these books and learning how to observe things as well. The last point here is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a bygone era. It's the English countryside, the language of the people, the habits, the lifestyle, the names, their sort of nature. All of that is sort of captured in these books. So I've just given you an overview about what the books are, contain, etc. Let's go on to the next slide. What is it specifically about? So James Heriot is a vet. He's a veterinarian, and he runs his practice in Yorkshire, in a village in Yorkshire. He has a partner called Siegfried, who has a brother called Tristan. So it's about them. It's about their practice. It's about their clients. It's about his patients, the animals. It's about the people or the farmers that he interacts with, or the people who keep those animals. There are stories about his experiences in the Royal Air Force as well. He was called to the war. About the people in his locality, it's about Yorkshire life from 1930 to the 1970s. So quite a wide range. I think the whole it's lovely picture he paints, and not just with his words. These have actually been converted to TV and film adaptations. Next slide, please. And there have been several television and film adaptations of these books as well, including a film called All Creatures Great and Small. There's a BBC television series of the same name, which ran about 90 episodes, and a 2020 UK TV series as well. With that being said, I've just provided you some context, perhaps, into this author whose books I absolutely love. Let me hand it over to the real expert here, Mr. Namo, to take us through a little more.
Yeah, thank you, Ashwin. First of all, I have to convey my deep appreciation to TG. The amount of pain and the amount of effort he takes to implement each of these events, the amount of follow-up he makes, the rigorous preparations he makes, I have to really appreciate. So I want to convey my appreciation to him. And thanks a lot, Ashwin, for the introduction. I will go through the books, and it's not only the books. I will go through the person. I will talk about the person behind these books and the characters who play a major part in these books, both human beings as well as the animals. So what I understood is there are quite a few of our members who have already gone through his books. I think quite a few, I think maybe a couple or a few. So they must have got addicted to his books. And how I came to know about this James Heriot was through my family members. And fortunately for me, my grandfather, my mother, my father, they were all avid book lovers. And I saw them addicted to his books. And out of curiosity, I took one of his small books. I think it was Let Sleeping Beds Lie, I think. So after reading one or two chapters, when I told my grandfather and my mother, I don't find his book appealing to me. Basically, I'm an engineer. I don't know what I will do with a veterinary doctor who is treating cows and goats and dogs. Yeah. So that's my first feeling. That was my first feeling. Then I kept the book down. But I often, as it happens, a time has to come for you to appreciate any book. That's what I was saying. Unless the time comes, then you never get used to a book or start appreciating any book. So several months passed. Then one day when I didn't have any time, nothing else in my hand, then I took the book again. Then I went through the book. And that's when I got addicted to his books. Then I bought his other books one by one. Then I bought the omnibus editions. Then I bought the bigger book, which is called as the Best of James Heriot. It's an excellent book. So I will just show. So I started with these small books. Then I graduated up to the omnibus books. Then from there, I got post-graduation to James Heriot. And this is a lovely book, lots of illustrations, very beautiful pictures, amazing book. And as you can see from the picture, the place where he worked, it's a beautiful landscape, lots of ups and downs, full of nature beauty, unspoiled by pollution, no traffic, no noise. So whoever loves this kind of a peaceful landscape and life, they will thoroughly enjoy this. And one very important thing is, This picture was taken during summer. So it looks so beautiful. The same place during winter time with maybe minus 20 degrees, 30 degrees, it will be a terrible place. Yeah? Especially for a countryside practitioner like James Heriot. So you can see the landscape behind him. And this is actually not James Heriot. This is for a TV serial. He's an actor. But this picture gives an idea of the place where he worked. So, and I had the good fortune of visiting his place, but unfortunately I was not able to go around. I was able to visit only his house, which has now been converted into a museum. And what's so special about the books? The language. For a veterinary doctor who's treating cows and dogs and sheep, the kind of language what he is using is really amazing, incredible. The very powerful writing style. Any number of times you read, you never get tired of his books. Really wonderful thing. So I will later on explore. I will go through as to how a veterinary doctor got into a profession of writing books. Very fascinating thing. And I also understand some of our members, they are very good writers. And probably James Heriot's life will be an inspirational thing for them to gradually upgrade themselves into professional writers. And keen observation. So this is one thing. When you read his books, then you find yourself accompanying him wherever he is going, the road he travels, the climatic conditions, the people whom he is meeting, or the animals with whom he is encountering. You find a very keen sense of observation, minute points. And of course, we have the love of nature, the love of animals, the love of humans, and of course, finally, the land where he worked. So now he is no more. He passed away in 1995. And as Ashwin mentioned, it's a capture of a bygone era of English countryside. The people, the habits, the lifestyle, the language, which no longer are present now. This is a tragedy now. For instance, you have Chennai, then you have Tirunelveli, then you have Vellore, other places. Probably 50 years before, you would have found the habits of the people, the way they talk, the language, everything was very distinct. Tirunelveli language and all is very famous. Or Thanjavur language or Madras language. But over a period of time, with the habitation change, people getting migrated, and with the television coming and media, what's happened is all that kind of distinct differences have gone now. Now you don't know whether you are in Tirunelveli or Chennai. It's all the same now. Then we have the important characters, Siegfried and his brother Tristan. And incidentally, I will come in a later slide, come to a later slide. Herriot, Siegfried, and Tristan, the names are all pseudonyms. They are not the real names. So the real names are Alf White, who is James Heriot, then Farnan, who is Siegfried, and Brian is a Tristan. And James Heriot had a passion for classical music, and the music composer Wagner. The names Siegfried and Tristan, they come in Wagner. So he adopted these names from his famous composer, favorite composer, and that's why we have Siegfried and Tristan. And these books are all semi-autobiographical. autobiography, but he has added his own, what should I say, thoughts and kind of things. So he has given fictitious names for real places. The town names are also slightly different, and the names of the patients and the names of the clients, they are also different. I'll come to the reason why he has used different names. And this is about Yorkshire life during 1930, 1970s. Of course, it came as a TV serial and movie also. So here we have the author, his favorite landscape, and his favorite pets. So James Heriot is a pseudonym. The real name is James Alfred White. Now his real, actual profession. He was a veterinary doctor in Yorkshire countryside in England. It's the north of London, between Scotland and London, basically. So during summer time is excellent place, and winter time it will be a difficult place to live in. Heavy snowfall, severe cold, and his job was a dirty, hazardous job because he used to be treating all farm animals. Farm animals means cows and bulls, and sheep and goats. This is very different from a pet veterinary doctor job. For a pet means, so for example, like dogs and cats, where people can do work inside a clinical laboratory, very comfortable, air conditioned, so on a table. But wherever he was working those days, his animals, his patients, they used to be in some remote farms, maybe 20 miles, 30 miles away, on a hillock, where the cars may not be able to go. And whether it's shine or rain or winter, then he has to go anytime, 24 hours a day. Then he had to go and attend to the patients. So it was a very dirty and hazardous job. And it was a thankless job. For all the work he was doing, the hard work, and he could get in return only blame and accusation. Probably he was charging very high. Probably he was late. Probably he was a useless fellow. And his treatment was no good. Criticism. And of course, politics. So it's very interesting to read his books. With all these kind of bad things, blame, accusation, criticism and all, still he puts everything in a very nice manner. So you thoroughly enjoy everything. So there's no heartburn or kind of thing. The perspective, his way of looking at things, very fascinating. The remuneration, not good. Because he was working with poor farmers. The amount of money he was making was very less. Remuneration, not good. Inclement weather and climate. 24/7 work timing. So one very fascinating thing is, probably it was only a single animal, probably goat or sheep, and probably the goat or sheep was lying 30 miles, 40 miles away in some remote farm somewhere. And in the middle of the night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, he gets a telephone call. The farmer, he shouts, "My goat is in a bad shape. I don't know what you're going to do. I want you to be here as quickly as possible to attend to the goat." Yeah. Looks very funny. Like somebody should get up at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the midnight in peak winter and drive all the way down for an animal, which probably is only, even for example, in India, I'm not very sure. whether for even humans, doctors will come for this kind of a thing. Amazing. So within a matter of minutes, he will get himself ready. Then he will travel and do a work in a very hard, difficult situation where he didn't have hot water or soap for sanitizing himself. Complete the job and return early in the morning. Have 2 hours small sleep. Again, maybe 8 o'clock something. Will have his breakfast. Again, go for the job. Rounds. Yeah. So it's really amazing. And here we have some very fascinating background of his education and the writing career. Very fascinating. He took 6 years to complete the 5-year program and Glasgow Veterinary College because of his health issues, apparently. But according to New York Times, there was another reason. He failed many of his classes on the first try. So he failed in surgery, pathology, physiology, histology, even animal husbandry, which he failed twice. So his education was in shambles. So the incredible thing is, so with this kind of education, he joined a profession. He did well in the profession. So it's really amazing. And with this kind of a background, in 1995, 50 million of James Heriot books had been sold. So this is his education background, professional background. And 1995, 50 million of Herriot's books had been sold all over the world. The very important major things are the character of the human being, the character behind Herriot, the traits and passion. So this I have seen with many people. Whoever has got this kind of a trait and passion in whatever field they go, finally they come up and they really shine like anything. So many times I have seen. So whether you take S.V. Balasubramanian, he did his MBA and all. Finally, he's left the MBA. Then he joined the musical field, where everybody said, it may not be as good as your MBA profession or something. Finally, the passion, it took him to very high places. So he recognized that veterinary career offered him the opportunity to combine earning a livelihood with his love for dogs and cats and his preference for outdoors. So somewhere he has mentioned he would have preferred to live in this kind of a difficult and very hazardous life on a daily basis, rather than having some other profession which is in a comfortable room, air conditioned, inside a city. Yeah, his preference for this kind of outdoor life was really excellent. So he was thoroughly enjoying his life from beginning to end. And oftentimes I find people who make a lot of money, who have fashionable cars, who live in huge buildings, mansions. But when we talk about their profession, the job, all they have to say is, I hate my job. So the thing is, they spend all their life hating something and doing the job. And they get in return, what they get in return is probably a very good house, or probably a very good car, very good money, which they cannot enjoy. Because most of the time they are working in some kind of a job which they don't like. So even in his early teens, White was capable of making a decision, acting boldly on it, and working single-minded determination to carry out. So this is very fascinating. repeated his pattern almost 40 years later when he accepted the challenge to act on his talk of writing a book about his veterinary experiences. So later on, his son Jim, he said about his father, as a young man setting out on his career, I realized that he displayed two qualities essential for success in any chosen field: determination and self-belief. He would not give up despite the disappointing rejections, and he genuinely believed that his little book was worthy of publication. So this is really incredible. So his trust on his own capabilities really saw him through. And White's obituary confirmed his modesty and preference to stay away from public eye. So he was basically a shy person, not very flamboyant kind of thing. So he used to say, doesn't give me any kick at all. He once said, it's not my world. I wouldn't be happy there. So I wouldn't give up being a vet if I had £1 million. I was too fond of animals. So whether he wanted to give up or not, this £1 million automatically came to him. So that's the irony of the fact. £1 million. And incidentally, what happened was, after the books got published, then visitors from all over the world, they made a pilgrimage, I should say, to his house. Then he was really disturbed because he was basically a private person. Then he shifted from that house. Then he moved out of the house and lived in privacy. So while all the visitors, they visited his house, because the house is a very prominent thing figuring in his stories, the rooms, the staircase, the kitchen, everything. So the visitors, they come and have a look. So he lived separately, and he lived the other house only. So then he says, I wouldn't give up being a vet if I had £1 million. I'm too fond of animals. How he came to write his books. So it did not come suddenly. So he was a prolific writer, and he had a passion for writing. So even as a student, even during his childhood, he used to write so much. So he kept copious diaries as a child. As a teenager, wrote for his school magazine and wrote at least one short story during his college years. So they were all actually preliminary stages of his writing. And in early 1960s, he began analyzing books of successful authors that he enjoyed reading, such as P.G. Wodehouse and Conan Doyle, to understand different writing styles. So actually, a lot of work had gone into his becoming a professional writer. He had really worked very hard. And during this time, he also began writing more seriously, composing numerous short stories, and in his own words, bombarding publishers with them. So this is very, very interesting. How he came to write his books. So he had only a passion. Finally, the books were not there. So he began to write only after his wife encouraged him to write at the age of 50. So he was already 50. But he had some interesting habits. Every day after he completed his job, the moment he returned back to his house, he'll recount whatever he did that day, either to his wife or to his boss. So he will recount all the experiences he had, the people whom he met, his patients, everything. So what happened was this kind of a recounting the experiences, it ingrained into his memory. Otherwise, no, it will go. I mean, it will disappear, go out of memory. It ingrained into his mind, which later helped him to write all his books in very vivid detail. After 25 years of nagging, so after telling all these stories every day, then he used to tell his wife, one day I'm going to put everything on paper. But unfortunately, nothing happened. Only he used to say, I'm going to put everything on paper. Very fascinating. But unfortunately, he never put his pen on paper. And after 25 years of nagging, the wife, she used to tell him, we have been telling this story for many years now. So she got tired of his talking like this and humoring him. She pointed out one day that someone who is 50 years old and has never written a line isn't going to start writing books at his age. So somewhat a caustic remark she made. So it was very interesting. The simple one caustic remark, it somehow triggered him. Then White took her comment very seriously as a challenge and became determined to do it. So he had a typewriter. I saw the typewriter in that museum. He had a very simple, small typewriter. He took some piece of, he went to the shop. He bought some paper. Straight away started typing. That's how his writing career commenced. So, and then what happened? It was not very smooth. It had its own downs and ups. This is what normally happens for most of the people. And whoever is able to carry on in spite of all the downs, finally they succeed. And whoever is with the down and they give up, then they lose the battle. So White's early efforts in having his writing published were unsuccessful. Very interesting. His style was very good. His style was improving, but the subjects were wrong. So this is where the niche subject comes. There are a million things to write about. So maybe the person is very proficient in writing, but unless he takes a proper subject and polishes his writing skills to do justice to the subject, then all the effort goes in vain. So then this he recognized early on. So very interesting. Style was improving, but the subjects are all wrong. Choosing a subject where he was more experienced and where he had more passion, then I think his first book was about some science topic, something like that. Science anyway is a very dry topic. So that all got rejected. So it was a failure. Then finally he recognized the symptom. Then he chose a subject where he was more experienced, where he had more passion. And in 1969, he wrote, If Only They Could Talk, about his animals. But they were not able to talk, they were not able to converse. So then he said, If Only They Could Talk. A collection of stories centered around his experience as a young veterinarian in Yorkshire Dales. It was a small book, and each book will have many chapters, maybe 20, 30 chapters. This book was published in UK, 1970. White followed it with another book, It Shouldn't Happen to a Vet, 1972. He wrote 2 books. The sales were very slow until St. Martin's Press in New York City received a copy. So this is where the luck plays a part. Issued a copy and arranged to have both the books published in USA. White named its volume All Creatures, Great and Small. The resulting book was a huge success. Yeah, so very fascinating. And incidentally, the poem, All Things Bright and Beautiful, All Things Great and Small, All Things Wise and Wonderful, by Cecil Frances Alexander. And Cecil Frances Alexander is basically a lady. She was a lady, not a man. Cecil Frances Alexander. The poem was very famous. And it was Herriot's daughter, Rosie. Get mentioned somewhere. She gave the suggestion that he could give the title to his books based on the poem. So he gave the title to his books taken from each line from the poem. So all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful. The Lord God made them all. The resulting book was a huge success. So I can see an analogy in this. I don't know how many of you have read Jim Corbett. So Jim Corbett, again, he was in Himalayas, basically. He was a white hunter. And he also had a he was a lover of nature, lover of animals. And he had not many stories, very thrilling and very daring, excellent stories. But he never thought of putting anything on paper. Then he used to talk to people, share his experiences, kind of thing. Then one person, some lady, she said, why don't you put all these experiences in paper and publish a book? Same like what happened to Herriot. His wife, she only was a trigger. So to Corbett, she was a trigger. Then finally, he again took some paper and he had a typewriter and he typed something. Then it came as a very, very small book, Jim Corbett. And he printed only 100 copies. And there was a free distribution. And finally, somebody from USA, they happened to see this book. They took that book and it got published in USA and it became very famous. Then he wrote 8 books. Same like what happened to Herriot. Started as a small trickle and within a very short period of time, it was an avalanche, a deluge. And immediately within a short period of several years, both of them became world famous. And not only became world famous that time, now after several decades, still the books are very popular. And every year, several million copies of the books are getting sold all over the world.
There's only one correction to it. In terms of Jim Corbett, it was his sister, Maggie. Jim Corbett was never married. So it was his sister, Maggie, was prompting him to write.
No, actually, it was not Maggie. Somebody in the club, that's what I remember. Because he used to narrate all his experiences in the club and we will have an audience.
Yeah, that's true. But since you mentioned wife, so I just wanted to pitch in. It's not his wife.
Maggie was a really great person.
Yeah.
So actually, there used to be a saying, it was Maggie who prevented him from getting married. So she was very possessive. So,
yeah, he too was possessive.
And this is a very fascinating thing here, this slide. His fortune, he died on 23rd February 1995, at age 78, leaving an estate valued at some 5 million pounds or 11 million pounds. Unimaginable money, 2021. Unknown veterinary doctor in an unknown place, small countryside, making such a huge amount of money with paper and pen at the age of 50 plus. This is an incredible achievement. And his first salary, as mentioned in his book, was £4 a week. And this too he got by luck only. So we'll talk about this later. Where people are not able to get any job during that time, was able to get £4 a week, which he said that it was very affluent. In the paragraph from his book, may present after his marriage, may present to Helen, his wife, at the time of her marriage, was a modest gold watch, and this had depleted my capital to the extent that the bank statement that time revealed a sum of 25 shillings standing to my credit. And anyway, we had no money to throw around. So from that kind of a situation, in a very short period of time, he landed up like this. An incredible story, very inspiring. So this was James Heriot, and this was his boss, Siegfried. Initially, he was the boss. He gave the job to him at £4 a week, very graciously. And this is Tristan, the brother of Siegfried. All three of them are veterinary doctors. So the story, part of the stories, they revolve around these very interesting characters, very fascinating characters. So Herriot and his boss, and later on a partner. A very fascinating character, his boss. Siegfried Farnan is portrayed as outspoken, opinionated, bossy, quick to lose his temper, and also quick to blow over. Basically good-hearted, an animal lover, and fond of riding. Based on Herriot's books. When White's first book was published, Sinclair is the original name of Siegfried. Sinclair Donald was the real name of Siegfried Farnan. Was offended by his portrayal, and he said, "Alfred, this book is the real test of our friendship." You will find in his books, Herriot's books, he would have made fun of his boss like anything, unimaginably. So Sinclair was so peeved by White's portrayal that at one point he threatened to sue him. Things calmed down, however, and the pair continued to work together until they retired. A really very wonderful kind of thing. With all those, misunderstandings and quarrels and fights, everything. Still, they got along very well with each other in the same house. Really wonderful kind of thing. And Alf White's son, Jim, wrote in his book, The Real James Heriot, because he wanted to write a book about his father, The Real James Heriot. That Sinclair's character novels was considerably toned down, and Sinclair was even more eccentric than Herriot books portrayed. Yeah, and very tragic thing was Siegfried. It is Herriot's earlier boss and partner. He took his own life few weeks after his wife's death. So it was a very tragic thing. His character was very different. So this is a setting for the stories of Yorkshire for Herriot, stories of Herriot, Yorkshire Dales. So you will find all the hills, hillocks, the valleys, the farms, full of greenery, bright blue sky background, very beautiful place. And here we have a very small town there, all ancient old buildings. no modern buildings. And here we have the characters, Sacred, Tristan, and some lady characters. Then we have the dog, the pet dog, the clients, not clients basically, the patients, doctor's patients. Here we have Herriot. Basically, this is from a movie or a TV serial. They are all actors basically. So this is the setting of his stories. Very beautiful setting, very beautiful descriptions. Excellent. Here we have the background. No tall buildings, no chimneys, no smoke, no pollution, no noise. Absolutely peaceful. Serene. Lovely countryside. So we have a small lot of buildings here. Uncluttered roads. Beautiful driving. I think anybody will enjoy this kind of life. If only the life was not as harsh and difficult and hazardous as was a veterinary doctor's life. And Thirsk. Actually, Thirsk is the real name of the place where he worked. So in his books, he calls it as Darobi. So to him, Daro was a small river or stream flowing through the place. And Darobi is actually means Darobi, a town near the river, town near the place called as Daro, the stream called Daro. And the real name of the place is Thirsk. So this little countryside town. So actually, when I went to London, I made it a point to visit the place. Then I checked for Darobi. There was no place called as Darobi. Then I found the real place was Thirsk. Then I booked a ticket for Thirsk, went by train to the place, spent one day there, and came back again. Then there I found I was not the only guy. So in the museum, they have a register. And I found visitors coming from Australia, Tasmania, New Zealand, USA, anywhere, from India, all over the world. They come and sign there, the comments. So they're really amazing and incredible. How a small veterinary doctor from a remote countryside could attract so many people from so many places to visit the place. And Thirsk has become a magnet for fans of White's books. Following his death, the practice at 23 Kirk Gate was restored and converted into a museum, the world of James Heriot, which focuses on his life and writings. Local pub renamed itself as Darobi Inn, after the village name that White created to represent the locale in which he practiced. So these photographs I had taken actually. So this is in front of his house, where he actually practiced. And now it's become a museum there. So they put placards and boards, and they have maintained the house very well with all his original implements, the laboratory, the table, the kitchen, everything is there. Exactly. So it's my son and my wife. And this is the small town, Darobi or Thirsk. You find all real cottage kind of buildings. Still, we don't have skyscrapers and kind of thing. Very beautiful place. Cobbled streets. Very peaceful. Bright sky. All clouds. This is the inside hall of his house, which is now a museum. So you find lots of books everywhere. And this is probably where he acquired his writing skills. And this is a wax image of Herriot, as if he is reading a newspaper. sitting on a coach. And here we have the keyboard, his passion for music. So they have converted the house into a real museum, as if he's still living there. In one of the rooms, there are many rooms. And this is a place which is called as a marketplace. So we have a clock tower here. So it figures very prominently in many of his books, marketplace. And this is the place he arrived at Dharavi during the day of his interview with his boss, Sacred Farnan. He got down from the bus at this place near the clock tower, and that's where his career started. And so this place is very, very famous. So I went to this place. And very interestingly, the train from London to Yorkshire, via Yorkshire, it has been named after James Heriot. A train which has been named after a veterinary doctor who was a writer. It was an incredible thing to do, achievement to get. So the train is called as James Heriot. Starts from London, Grand Central. Operates a train services from Sunderland to London, London's King's Cross, stopping at Thirst. The train was named James Heriot in White's honor. So it speaks volume of his proficiency or his ability to impress people through his writings, even though he was a very humble person. So automatically the fame came to him in spite of his abhorring fame and kind of thing. Still it came to him. I traveled by this train to his place. And this is the marketplace. There we have the clock tower. And very interestingly, there is a live webcam. So which has been sponsored by his family. You can open this link here. Then immediately it will take you to this place. And you can sit here comfortably in your room in Chennai and watch the people walking, going around, the cars moving around. The time also you can see 4.5 hours difference any time of the day. Now it's summertime, so it's all very blue and kind of thing. And you can see the change in seasons. And you will find snow coming everywhere. So any time of the day, night you will find all lights coming up. So very beautiful. So this is a live webcam. So whoever is a fan of Herriot, so they can visit the site, sit as if you will see people sitting in all these chairs here. So you can also sit comfortably in your room here, as if you are sitting actually in the place and enjoy everything. So now my 1 hour time is finished now. So I leave the group for any discussions or yeah, Ashwin.
No, nothing to add from me, sir. I think I'll let TJ sort of throw it open for questions. If people have any questions or comments.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, Ashwin, and Namo, for taking us through the life of a vet surgeon who's turned into an author and became so world famous. Yeah, it's really a very nice, look into his life and how it all shaped up. You covered a lot of aspects of an interesting personality. I think I will ask the audience to probably share their experience of reading his books or coming across any of his writings. That'd be apt. And ask any questions.
See, out of curiosity, I compared Gerald Durrell with his books. because he was also writing about animals, nature kind of thing. But there's a big difference between his writing and Herriot's writing. There's a lot of humor in Herriot's books.
No, Gerald Durrell also is humor. I mean, his humor is amazing.
Yeah.
My family and other animals. If you, for example, my family and other animals, if you take it,
Yeah.
the humor is like it hits you a little later. I mean,
But I feel like Gerald Durrell's books are more on the humor side. I think for Herriot, it is a sort of lens into his life, the surroundings, etc. There's a bit of tragedy and failures, as also outlined earlier, when he loses some animals under his care, and I think that way it's a little different from Gerald Durrell. Both are amazing for their depiction of animals, but in a very different manner, I feel.
true.
And the thing is, no, he doesn't project himself as a very proficient or highly skilled surgeon.
Okay.
So whichever patient he attends to, they all immediately become healthy, come back to life kind of thing. So he shares all the tragedies, all the failures, his mistakes, everything. The same kind of, what should I say, feeling, the way he was sharing his successes. So on both the things, his failures as well as success, he looks from the same point of view. Some people know, they try to claim themselves. I went there, I treated the animal, and they came back to life. So that kind of thing. So that kind of a false claim was not there with his books. Very openly he says, I went there, in spite of all my efforts, failed. It was a tragedy, kind of thing.
And also a very human element, I feel, because when he loses, that there are a couple of instances where he loses a dog, right? And there was one, I forget the one where I think there was a dog who was giving birth and couldn't be saved. I mean, I have some recollection of it. I don't remember the names, etc. But he takes it very personally, though, right? I mean, he gets upset, he gets depressed, and he talks about it. He does mention it. So it's a very human approach as well. It's a very real depiction of the ups and downs of a vet. After reading James Heriot books, I really want to be a vet for the longest time. In fact, I mean, I don't know if it created the feeling or the goal of being a vet or something, but also it gave a very real perspective to the whole thing. There were some things that, he gets very real about his description and what happens, right? And there were some aspects of that I didn't find particularly attractive, like delivering calves and all. He goes into a lot of detail about how it was done in those days. So, some of those things I didn't really want to take part in, but, you really feel that connection with animals. And if you loved animals, I don't know how many vets are vets because of books like James Heriot, that created that feeling.
More of a journaling. I mean, his writing was more of a journaling. That's why he brought down the real picture as it is, rather than trying to add a humor or take it away the seriousness. He never tried to take away the seriousness too of some incident that he describes.
Correct.
So it's more of a journaling. Yeah.
Agree.
My cousin, she, after reading books, she was a fan of Herriot's books. So fan is very different from choosing a profession, choosing a career. She was a great fan of Herriot. Finally, she told her father, my life is going to be a veterinary doctor. It's not an easy job, very tough job. And in spite of his father trying to dissuade her, she went ahead. She became a veterinary doctor. And now she is traveling all over the world every month, giving lectures. She became an expert in small animal surgery. She's traveling all over the world every year, giving lectures in all gatherings, huge gatherings, USA, Europe, everywhere, unimaginable. After reading Herriot's books.
Wonderful.
Anybody else has read his books, Herriot's?
Satya, why not you share about some of your experience of having read Herriot?
Actually, I have ordered one book now. Possibly I will get next week. The book was written by his son about his father. So instead of seeing everything through Herriot's eyes, so we get to have an opportunity seeing things from his son's point of view.
The real James Heriot.
And the real James Heriot, the real person. So probably it will arrive
So
next week.
you had read all his books, I guess, and then you are covering others who are reading or writing about him. That's great. You have been to his place also, how passionate you are on one author. Is there any other author on whom you are as passionate as you are with James Heriot?
Carpet, even Carpet. See, both these authors, no? I have been their fans for close to more than 45 years. Both of them. And I went to Jim Carpet's house. So that is also a museum now. And I must have read the books maybe, I don't know how many hundreds of times. So any time of the day, take the book again go through.
This man-eater of, what is it, village name?
Wow.
Kumau. Yeah.
And it is a Kumau. Because the character of the writer shines through all the books. So that's very different from fiction writers, because the books are very different from the writer. But these writers, their character, their courage, their passion, empathy, everything shines through all the books, and the powerful way of writing, expressing. So it creates a lot of impact. And both of them have fans all over the world. Millions of fans all over the world for decades.
In fact, I was just thinking,
Is there any other author?
when I picked up that book, right, TG, I was thinking,
Yes, sir.
sorry. I was just thinking, when I picked up that book, I couldn't recall how that book came to be, because I certainly did not buy it. So I was just checking with mom, and mom's on the call, and she said she bought it for my great grandma as a birthday gift. That's how it happened to be at home. And that's how I picked it up and started reading. I think it was All Things Bright and Beautiful was the first one. So it's something that's, come down through generations. And I think, I don't know, maybe it'll make my daughter feel like being a vet, who knows? But I've got some of those in the cupboard waiting for her when she's old enough. TG, sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying
No. I would love to hear from Shanta mom also about her experience then, about that book, and has she read? I'm sure she would have read too.
Hers is muted, I think. Her mic.
Yeah, mic is muted.
Okay. Satya, you wanted to share something about your experience of reading?
No, that's what I pitched in. Once in a, when needed, I pitched in. That's it. And I think I don't want to make any statement per se. But definitely there is a difference between Gerald Duller and him and Jim Carpet. All three of them spoke about, wrote about animals, passionate about animals, and each brought in their own style. With Jim Heriot more being journal and dural and extreme humor. Whereas Jim Carpet is more of as a colloquial way of, instead of speaking, he used to write, and so more of a realistic, and he brings out hill life of Nainital and around that place, Kaladungi and all those places. He brings it in front of your eyes. So that way, each of them had a different style of writing. Of course, I like the least Herriot book because I'm not an animal person, but so since it's more of a journal type, it didn't, I didn't have that much of a what do you say, preference for his books over others. But yes, nevertheless, they are all prolific, and that way I like that.
Sorry, I missed a question, I think.
No, it's not a question. We just would like to hear from you, Shantanu.
Okay.
Ashwin was sharing that he happened to find that book on the shelf and you said it's got from your mom.
I had got it for my granny's birthday. She was well
Oh,
into
you
her
got
70s, but she was an avid reader. So I had got it for her birthday, and it has gone down the generations. We are a family of readers. And I think I survived having 3 boys. This is my eldest. I've got 2 more. And I think I survived because they all had books to read. And so they kept off my head most of the time. Of course, I still had to settle fights, and I still do. But
I know.
they most of the time they would keep themselves occupied. Childhood was spent like that. So actually, I think I should thank my granny in putting the genes of reading into all of us. So that's how it was.
That's
And
nice.
he has carried on that little bit of this thing of inclination towards animals by being a big aquarist. He has got a showroom and he's mad about fish. So keeps me
Yeah.
going.
That's an interesting connection you brought. I mean, do you think the book had an influence on he choosing his career in one way or other into becoming an aquarist?
No, if you ask him where he got his fascination was for fish was, he puts the blame on me totally. Because I had 34 tanks in my house. And I used to spend 1 week just cleaning them up till I got fed up of doing the job and gave it all up. And then he has started. So that was this thing. But of course, James Heriot has played a very major role in all our fascination for animals in general. And like Ashwin said, we had dogs, we had birds, rabbits, all sorts of things in our house. So he has played a very important role in all our lives.
That's wonderful.
Thank you so much for bringing around this. I didn't know this club exists. I'm hearing it for the first time, but I'm glad I met you all.
Amazing. We are also very glad.
Yeah.
Connecting to Namo, when we were talking, you were saying that you also come from a family of readers.
Yeah.
Am I right? And then this book was lying in your home or something like that.
Yeah, that's right, correct. Because my mother or my grandfather, they used to read all books in the sense they will read Enid Blyton, and they will read a philosophy, and they will read fiction or detective books. So I mean, there is no difference. Because some people, they will say, I will read only fiction, I will read only detective books, kind of thing. So whatever books they lay their hands on, they will read. Read means hours together. So I am not that kind of a reader. I have very selective reading. So very selective books. I happen to see the book today, one of my very old Herriot book. It's already become brown color. They say dog-eared. So dog-eared is also torn off now. And the date here, which I bought as a second-hand book somewhere, received from a platform, it's written as 1980. It's close to 42 years now. So we have a nostalgic feeling for those kind of books. So you may have a very fresh book from Amazon, but somehow this old friend, which was there with me for 42 years, they're very special friends. And one very interesting thing I noticed, Herriot, he started writing after he became 50 years old. Similarly, Corbett, he started writing, or he wrote all his books only during the last 5 years of his life. So he died in 1955. Yeah, 1955. All his 7 or 8 books he wrote only during the last 4 years of his life. And he completed the last book, I think 1 month or a few weeks before he died. And all the books became world famous. And very fortunately, he wrote all those books during the end, the part of his life. Very fortunately. Otherwise, we would have lost all the rich, excellent experience. Everything would have lost. and all of them became very famous. So there is another comparison between both of them.
Yeah. So anybody else has any other points, listeners, who would like to ask?
And one more thing I noticed.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm not a dog lover. I'm afraid of dogs. So, but incredibly, what I find is, whoever is having a dog as a pet in the house, they don't consider the dog as an animal. They consider the dog as a member of the family. So that amazing bonding between animal and a human being, that always amazed me. They consider the pet as a member of the family. And in Tamil also, I have seen them. Vanga ponga. They will not say, "Nai vanduchu podallam." They will not say, "Vanga ukkarunga." Saptingla. So that really amazed me many times. I have a friend of mine. So he was not a dog lover. He got married. Then the newly married wife, the moment she came to the house, she said, "I have a suggestion. Why don't we have a pet dog in the house?" My college classmate. Then he told his wife, "Either you stay in the house or the dog will stay. Either you stay in the house or I stay in the house. Or the dog will stay in the house or I will stay in the house. Either you choose what you want to do. If you take the dog inside, I will go out. Or you leave the dog, I will stay here." Yeah. And this was the reply given by him. And after 25 years, 30 years, they had children. They also went abroad, settled down, everything. The wife, because the house became empty now. They say empty nest, no? Nest has become empty now. Then she popped up the same question. Now shall we have a dog? So this time he thought, after so many years, why don't we give a chance? So a small puppy came into the house. Then he said, "I'm wondering how without a dog I managed 30 years. How without a dog I managed for 30 years. And he calls the dog as Vanga Ponga. So I'm always amazed the magic behind the bonding between the human being and the animal.
Yes, Kalpana, you're sitting in the showroom. You turned on your video. You want to talk about, I know when they're talking about the dog, you want to talk about your Shih Tzu. You're muted.
Yeah, that's when I really felt like, owning my video. I was all through listening. Yes, I came in 10 minutes when Ashwin was giving the introduction. It's really tempting to read this book because, yes, thanks to having a pet in the last 5 years, definitely we are more compassionate to other animals, even on the road. Slightly more, not slightly, lot more compassionate. In fact, when you see, before there were dogs, you will see them, but you just keep moving on. But then at least now you look at them, you see probably, okay, this street dog, when you go for a walk with your dog, you're just trying to, seeing that, observe their feelings, or, are they okay? All they need is just one little petting. And then they'll be so, and it's nice at the end of the day by 10:30 when you go take your dog for a walk, that you're at least being a little more compassionate, little more human, little more thoughtful. I think that's what I would want to say. And if I read the book, I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it. Like like Ashwin and Namachivayam, I can understand they're such wonderful humans simply because they read these books and very early in their lives, and they become better humans. This is what I feel. I'm just definitely it's made a lot of difference having a pet at home, and yeah, that's it.
There's a book called as Dog Stories.
Okay.
He has collected all the dog stories. There's a book called as Dog Stories.
Again, for the fear of repetition anyway, there's a lovely movie called Hachiko. For all the animal lovers, please watch it. And I was literally all the time, it's a very emotional movie. At least I found it very, very emotional. I was continuously crying. I watched it during COVID. It was a wonderful movie. It's a true story. It's based on a true story. So
The
yeah.
Japanese
Yes,
dog.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Hachiko.
Yeah.
Ashwin, have you seen that? You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, I think I have. It's about the railway station and all. No? The
Yes,
dog
yes,
was-
yes.
yeah.
That's
I
same
forget the
one,
breed
same
of the dog. The breed name of the breed I forget.
I don't. Yeah. Okay.
Shibu or something. But yeah, I remember. Very nice.
Shibuya.
Movie. Very nice.
Shibuya. The name of the station is Shibuya. Shibuya in Tokyo.
Okay. Okay.
So they kept a statue of the dog
Yes.
because the dog used to go with this boss master every day to the station, and one day he dies in the work spot.
That's
The
right.
dog was waiting in the evening for the master to come back.
Yes.
He never came back. Every day it used to go to the station till the end of his life. They put up
So
a statue
moving.
there.
So the breed name was Shiba Inu. That was trying to recall. Shiba Inu. Nice dog.
So there is there's something there because we really never realize, we never come to know. For example, now street dog is only a street dog, some animal there on the road. But the moment we start reading such kind of books, then we really find there's something there, more deeper.
Yes, certainly.
I think there's a similar experience. I think my great granddad, we've always had pets, right? We've always had dogs. I think there was a dog at that time, but after my great granddad, they were very, very close. But after my great granddad passed away, I think slowly the dog just wasted away, refused to eat, would sit in front of his chair where my Sorry, TG, I was muted. I don't know where you guys lost me.
Yeah, your grandfather, it wasted away. Your dog.
Yeah. So the dog eventually passed, just out of heartbreak or something, or grief. He got very, very attached.
In fact, the reason why we got Pepper home was when I went to see Prashant's cousin. He passed away. It was a heart attack. So the family was all shaken up. Yes, but this dog used to come to our home with his cousin because they stay quite close, and every day, once in a while. And my kids were young, so he used to come with his dog and let them play, and during the walks and go back. So when he passed away, we just went home. Obviously, okay, we're there. But the sadness in the dog's eyes was, he was like the morning when he passed away, we went, and then again we had to go the same day till the body was, those things are happening. So we went in the same day twice, and the dog was just there next to his, very close to him, and he was looking so miserable, so grief stricken, that even the humans were like, from morning to by the evening they were like okay, afternoon they were slightly okay, they are in grips, but this dog was totally there. That's when I came out with Prashant and I sat in the car. I told Prashant, let's get a dog. I think dogs are far more loyal. They're like, even better than humans. They're so lovely. Let's get a dog. And that's how Pepper came into home, ironically.
Beautiful thing
So
is, right?
I totally,
always...
I think they're the most beautiful things that you can give your child as a pet, is a dog. I think, yeah. And even it has done a lot of things. I think even TG will agree. What dogs can do to you is like immeasurable. They're really wonderful.
So we got a Shih Tzu as well during the lockdown, and my daughter wasn't really sure about animals, like around animals, and other friends have dogs as pets. Always a little scared. She was scared as well when we got Coco home. Coco is a tiny puppy, right? But now the bond they share is so strong. See, the thing about a dog is, like, they're always happy to see you. They're never in a bad mood. They don't care, right? You go out for 5 minutes. You go 5 minutes and come back. Like, you just go down to the car, get something, and come back. They still wag their bum, like, as if you've gone for like forever, and they're so happy to see you after such a long time. It's only been 5 minutes, but that level of affection and all of that is the same, no matter the duration of your being around or not being around. So that way, yeah, they're always happy to see you.
Maybe they are very expressive also, Ashwin. I don't know whether it is the same with all the other animals also. I'm not too sure in terms of emotions, what they carry towards the human beings. But they're very expressive.
Definitely, definitely. You can tell even
Yeah.
without speaking. I can tell when Coco's hungry. When she wants to, do something. She wants to come out of that room or something like that. The way they communicate with their eyes and
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Ashwin, the heroine of your conversation wants to share the space. There she is.
Where's Coco?
Coco's
No,
over
Coco,
here.
this is the older granddaughter. Coco. Coco is
Okay.
anyway, Coco is this one's younger sister. Daddy is talking about me. That's the comment I heard just now. Okay. Say bye.
That's nice. So
Yeah.
I'm sure she's also going to pick up the books on James Heriot and going to read and develop a lot of affection towards animals.
He is going through books like nobody's business, TG. Yeah, amazing. She loves reading. So happy that she's got that habit, to be honest. But she's going through books like crazy. I think James Heriot will come after a certain age, though, just because of the content. Yeah, definitely on the list.
Just imagine, granny's granny. Right? Gifts being passed around. When Namachivayam was talking about a brown book, brown turn book, pages turn brown. It will never happen to a digital book, Namachivayam. You always, wipe the screen and say, okay, it's pretty clean. It's a latest new one. But the whole feel of, lifting that few grams into the hands and then flipping the page with the fear of whether it will, crackle,
Correct.
Beautiful. It was like, I could relate to that completely. Especially the books which you picked up the roadsides, right?
Yeah.
For 20, 30 bucks, and they remain with you for long.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. So, how do you differentiate a person what kind of a difference would be there between a person who had read James Heriot books and who has not read? What do you think?
Yeah. So one very interesting thing I noticed now after reading his books, because he talks about so many characters. So many characters means we have villain characters, we have poor characters, we have very rich, affluent characters, and we have all kind of fancy characters. Yeah. And the thing is, very interesting thing is, when we actually see human beings, then we are able to relate those people with the characters he is mentioning in the books. Yeah. So this kind of a balance you get. So then we are able to see, oh, he belongs to this kind of a category. So that's very fascinating. So there are crooked characters in his books, crooked characters. They try to cheat kind of thing. And they're very genuine, very helpful kind of people, very kind people, generous people. So when you read them for many years, these kind of books, many years, then over a period of time, then you don't feel animosity towards hatred or anything towards such kind of people. Because their behavior or character is a trait, their trait. Their character. So otherwise, you get worked up, then you have hatred, then we have kind of things. That is not there. We get a balanced view. I will not say very refined spiritual kind of thing, but at least you are able to come to some kind of situation. Then we know it's their culture, behavior, and you get adjusted to that kind of behavior.
Okay. Thanks, Namo. And Ashwin, what are your thoughts on that note?
The question was more about what's the difference between someone who's read James Heriot and not, right?
Yeah, their perspective.
I think that whole empathy and that connection with animals, right? I think I started reading well before we had all those pets in the house. But I think the fact that I'd read those books made me more observant or empathetic, etc. when we had those dogs, birds, rabbits. Herriot never wrote about fish, right? It is mostly the large animals and the small animals as well, farm animals or even dogs, etc. But we had some of those animals too. So much more observant, not just human centric, but also looking at animals and trying to understand how they feel, and that whole like stimulus or reaction to a certain stimulus. Why could the animal be feeling this way? And then you sort of go down that thought and trying to figure things out later, because even for him, sometimes the whole process of diagnosis is a process of elimination, right? There are certain symptoms, and then you have to eliminate certain things and then figure it out. Without having read that, when you're dealing with animals specifically, then how do you it sort of opens up that new pathway to think about, right? So I think that whole empathy, the way of thinking along those lines, that deductive reasoning, at least when it comes to animals and why they might be behaving a certain way, I think that's what readers of James Heriot might have picked up.
Wow, wonderful.
See, one more thing I noticed is, after reading his books, when you walk on the road, and suddenly the trees, avenue, where you find the trees on both sides of the roads, they have meaning for you. The flowers, the greenery, the insects, the birds, butterflies. So then you learn to enjoy life more than before you started reading his books. Now everything has got a meaning now. Even a tree which is very taken for granted, which is the fragrance. So everything has got a meaning now. Now you're able to appreciate and enjoy your surroundings much better than before you started reading his books. The landscape. So it's not about animals only or human beings. So you're able to appreciate the nature to a fuller extent than before reading the books. So that is a great plus point. It makes a lot of impact. So the moment you go in the road, immediately start enjoying everything.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Namo and Ashwin, for taking time to prepare for this session and introduce a great human being, a vet and an author who during his last, after his practice, he has been forced to write like what you shared. And because of sharing, we are able to understand a different kind of a world and develop the empathy and live in a much beautiful world, which we can see through his eyes and his perspective. Like Ashwin shared in terms of the way of thinking, brilliant. So books can change the way we think. It brings about a better world, awareness, way of life, thought processes, and it definitely has a huge impact on our lives. And authors like James Heriot, one more point which I would like to highlight, which Namo pointed out, is how he successfully became an author also. Not that he wanted, but he wanted to express it, and then how he tried, and after a few attempts, he became so successful. And like what he said, Jim Corbett started writing in the last 5 years, and good that he wrote, because otherwise he wouldn't have known. So we have a lot to write, lot to read, lot to share, and to create a better world for the next generation. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing this.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate. Yeah, TG, Ashwin, Ms. Shanta for sharing, and Ms. Kalpana. Really.
Thank you all for enlightening us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks a lot. I'm pausing the recording now.